The scene begins in Los Angeles, where a young woman, Hannah, is heading into a cafe to pick up her favorite donuts before work. She can't decide which she wants, so she orders 3 of everything, and hands them out to all her colleagues when she arrives at the set. She works as the star of a design show called Love in Design. The show is all about remodeling clients' homes to give them a fresh new look. She appears to be well-liked, as everyone happily accepts her breakfast offerings and chats with her about her upcoming vacation. She touches up her makeup and gets ready to head on set, just as her colleague reminds her that they have a meeting with the head of the network, Wally, the following morning. Hannah is nervous at the implication, because any news from Wally is usually negative news, but her producer Julie reassures her that it's probably just some minor changes. Hannah heads on camera, and the shoot wraps up with a successful and happy couple complimenting the work her team have done. Meanwhile, a handsome architect called Jeff is in a cafe, ordering his breakfast for the first day of his new job. He chats with the waitress, Carol, who seems to know him well, and comments on the fact that he's changed up his normal order. He clarifies that he's intending to get back into his routine of cycling in the mornings, so he wants to increase his protein intake. Another man, Patrick, arrives, greeting Carol and Jeff enthusiastically. It seems as though Jeff returned to town for the job, which he got on account of Patrick's recommendation. The two of them laugh and joke together, showing they have a close bond. The following morning, Hannah and Julie enter the meeting with Wally. To Hannah's delight, it's not the negative news she was anticipating. Instead, Wally just wants them to shake up the show with something different for the mid-season, because they're not getting the ratings they want. But luckily, they've had a call from a prospective client. It's the owner of Lewisburg Manor, a huge mansion in Hannah's hometown of Lewisburg, which she once gave tours at when she was younger. The manor is being updated and transformed into a bed and breakfast in 5 weeks' time for a reopening. And as a result, the owner Margot called the show, as she's a big fan and wanted Hannah specifically to do the makeover. Hannah and our producer are bewildered by the sudden change in plans, but know that the continuation of their show relies on Wally, so they can't rightly refuse. Hannah sucks up her trepidation and puts on a smile. Hannah calls her mother while she's packing. She's proud of her daughter doing so well at work, although she's sad to hear that Hannah had to cancel her upcoming vacation. Hannah isn't too concerned, though, just relieved that the show wasn't taken off the air. Her mother is about to tell her something important, but Hannah has to hang up because the car arrives, and she doesn't get the opportunity to say it. Both her parents look worried after the call, although they're delighted to have her visiting home. It seems that whatever her mom was about to say might be some bad news for their daughter. We switch back to Jeff, who's setting up his new office at City Hall. It turns out that he's been hired to oversee the Lewisburg Manor project as a consultant. There's a committee in charge, and they've selected Jeff specifically because he's from the town and knows the property well. He protests that they don't need an architect for a quick 5-week remodel, but his assistant is firm. The committee aren't going to change their minds on this, but after it's done, he'll have some more interesting projects lined up. Exasperated, Jeff agrees, then inquires about the construction crew, and doesn't seem thrilled with the answer. Hannah's parents meet her and Julie at the airport, grinning happily. In the car on the way into town, they receive the news that they'll need to consult with the city architect on the orders of the preservation committee. Although it's a bother, they agree it's necessary in order to get the approval of the locals, since a lot of people aren't thrilled with the upcoming changes. If they need to cooperate with the historic preservation effort, they can do it. The conversation turns friendly as her parents tease Hannah about not coming home too often. They drop the pair off at Lewisburg Manor with the promise to collect them in an hour and allow them to go in and do their first on-the-ground exploration of the project. They meet Margot, who explains that after her husband passed, she took a year away to travel, and upon her return decided that she wanted to do something new with the manor. She didn't want to be stuck in the past, and thought it would be a good change for the town as well, to welcome in some new tourism, although not everyone has had the reaction she was hoping for. She expounds on how she loved Hannah's passion when she was a tour guide there, and it's exactly that reason she wanted her to do the renovation. She's got the perfect profile, as someone who knows and loves the town and its history, but also has a modern outlook on how it could be redesigned. Hannah's thrilled with the compliment, but confused when Margot mentions her collaborator, and turns to see Jeff, who's just arrived in the hallway. As soon as they lay eyes on each other, the pair have a moment, and it looks like Hannah isn't particularly happy to see him again. He greets Julie with a professional handshake, but then stands awkwardly in front of Hannah, not knowing what to say or do. She's still taken aback by his presence, and Julie suddenly realizes that this is the Jeff she's heard about before. It seems as though the pair have some sort of past. At home that night, Hannah is with her parents, and questions why they didn't tell her he was back. Her mother defends her decision by saying that she didn't want to add to Hannah's stress about work. Hannah, in a state of mild hysteria which completely contradicts her words, claims that she doesn't even care that he's her ex-boyfriend. She just completely clashes with his design style, and is concerned that the two won't work well together. Plus, the last thing she needs is any distractions when this renovation is so important, both for the town and for her career. Her Her parents sympathize with her, knowing it will make the job harder, and also that their daughter is most definitely lying about no longer having feelings for the handsome architect. That night, despite her firm words at dinner, Hannah pulls out a box of old memorabilia from her past relationship, reminiscing about the good times she had with Jeff when they were both in college. She then puts on a song, losing herself in the memories it brings with a gentle smile on her face, and contemplating the challenges that lie ahead. The next morning, there's an article in the local newspaper about the pros and cons of the planned makeover. Hannah doesn't get a chance to see it, as her father puts it down when she heads out for breakfast. At the cafe in town, she receives a call from Julie letting her know that Wally is going to be coming to personally look in on them later that day. Panicking, as Wally never comes to the sets, Hannah is totally unsure of how all this is going to go. It's stressful enough worrying about Jeff and about the viability of the show and making Margot, and the town, happy, but now she has her boss on her back as well. She orders 5 of every donut, not knowing Wally's favorite and determined to impress him. The crew begin filming as the manor is set up for the renovation. Hannah hands Margot a sledgehammer and lets her make the first mark on the wall. She's consulting with the owner about her plans for the downstairs lounge as Jeff leans on the wall, watching her. Distracted by his gaze, she heads over to confront him, irritatedly accusing him of hanging around when he doesn't need to be there. He's not thrilled by the situation either, as he's quick to let her know, because he wants to be getting on to actual work, not babysitting her crew. The pair quickly descend into a bitter back and forth, just as Wally arrives to see the camera crew filming them. He's delighted as he watches the former couple argue, loving the new dynamic that the drama brings to the show. The feud continues as they bicker, bringing up the past. Hannah even insults his old car, betting he still drives the same one he did in high school because of its history, and he bites back that he only drives it when he's trying to impress someone, causing her to roll her eyes. Eventually, Jeff walks off with a sneer, unwilling to listen to Hannah's point of view anymore. It's clear the pair share almost no similarities when it comes to design, and this working relationship is going to be extremely rocky. Wally loves it and instructs the camera crew to keep filming them. Hannah is giving instructions to the crew when Jeff informs them he's heading back to the office. Wally and Julie approach her, and her boss strongly insinuates that Hannah's spectacular argument with Jeff is just what the show might need. Unable to disagree with him, but horrified at the implication, Hannah looks to Julie for help, who only shrugs apologetically. Neither of them can go against what Wally wants. He holds their fate in his hands. A blissfully unaware Jeff appears, waving them goodbye and heading out at the door, without any idea of the storm that's about to come his way. Hannah corners Julie later on, and Julie admits that although the footage was an accident, she has to admit that it does add something that the show was lacking. Hannah keeps trying to protest, but Julie's logic is sound, and in despair, Hannah claims that it's always like this with him. They start out great, but every time, when it matters, they never manage to agree, and it crumbles. She doesn't want it to happen again. She's had her heart broken too many times. Julie promises that they aren't asking her to get into anything romantic with Jeff. It just has to be a professional working relationship, with the drama hyped up for the cameras. As a last-ditch effort, Hannah suggests that maybe Jeff won't be up for it, but she doesn't even seem to convince herself. Later on, Hannah's out in the woods fixing up her bicycle when Jeff rides by. It seems he was successful in restarting his morning exercise. They have a brief conversation which actually goes very pleasantly, as he recalls her own words about her design aesthetic, and offers to wait for her so they can continue the circuit together. It seems as though, despite their argument, Jeff really is a nice guy, and wants to try and maintain a good professional relationship with her. Perturbed by her lingering feelings for him, and trying not to let herself fall into the same trap as always, Hannah keeps herself at a distance, thanking him politely but letting him go on his way. She can't help herself from gazing after him longingly, though. While filming the opening of the show, Julie and Jeff have a brief conversation where he agrees to the idea of being on camera. He watches Hannah talking with rapt attention, admiring her work ethic and on-screen personality. He admits to Julie that he's always respected Hannah's outlook on design, even if he doesn't agree with it. When they wrap, Margot approaches Hannah and requests that they keep the sconces above the fireplace, which Hannah had previously told the crew to demolish. Taken aback, Hannah questions it, but Margot confirms they have a personal story behind them, and so she agrees to rescind her instructions. After the conversation, Jeff cuts in and remarks that in the past, Hannah would have immediately shut Margot down. He knows for a fact she hates sconces. Hannah shrugs and claims that things change. This time she's working for a client, and she needs to do things for Margot, not for herself. Jeff's impressed by her attitude, but still takes the opportunity to rile her up a bit, teasing her for fun until she snaps at him and stalks away. Later, Hannah and Julie are walking around the market and happen upon a vendor selling paintings. Hannah's struck by their beauty and takes the man's card, although she thinks they're probably not modern enough for the bed and breakfast she's trying to create. Julie asks how her process is coming along, and she admits that for the first time she's actually having some creative block. It's difficult for her, working with so many restrictions and parameters and things she has to preserve. She can't figure out a way to incorporate it into her vision for the new building. Plus, Jeff's presence isn't helping. Julie suggests that Hannah employs her creativity to get around the Jeff issue by recalling how to push his buttons and get around him, like she did in the past. With that advice, Hannah has a burst of inspiration and finishes up the rest of the preliminary design on her tablet, happy with her new ideas. The following day, Hannah is filming a segment where they need to remove the stained glass window in the old living room. Jeff steps in abruptly, flashing a look at the cameras, suggesting that they shouldn't. Although they're not breaking any of the committee's rules, he's adamant about it, and Hannah realizes that it's Jeff's own opinion. One thing she knows about him is that he can't resist putting his 2 cents in. They argue for a bit, until they agree to flip a coin to decide the fate of the window. Julie steps in, wondering what on earth is going on, and the pair clarify that this is how they always settled old disputes. They play a game to determine who wins. Otherwise, they'll end up in gridlock forever. Baffled, Julie can do nothing but watch as they try to find a coin. But upon realizing nobody has any cash on them, Jeff challenges Hannah to a game of cornhole instead. They rush out back and decide upon the terms of the arrangement. If Hannah wins, Jeff has to keep his nose out, unless it's an actual committee restriction. But if Jeff wins, she has to take his opinions into serious consideration with her design. After a thrilling match, Jeff is the winner by a tiny margin, and he gloats happily as Hannah stomps in frustration, angry that her design and her career now hinge on her having to listen to his terrible opinions. She warns Julie and the cameraman not to follow as she runs off. Later, Jeff is relaxing by the lake with Patrick and his family. His wife, Ally, asks how he's finding it being back in town, and he admits that the job description isn't exactly what he wanted it to be, and that his opinions aren't even being respected. Man to man, Patrick advises him that it's probably not the job itself that's getting him frustrated, but the fact that he still hasn't been able to get over Hannah after all these years. The pair of them just gravitate, like a force of nature. Jeff vehemently denies it, but seems to be trying to convince himself as much as anyone else. Hannah is working in her room when her mother comes in. She vents that she keeps second-guessing herself. There are so many people wanting so many different things, and she has to find a way to keep everyone happy: Margot, Jeff, herself, and Wally. Her mom puts on some music, advising her to listen to it and relax, as she's never going to find the answers when she's so stressed. The following day, Hannah is recording the next segment and speaks to the camera about her solution. Jeff steps in once again, refusing to allow her to knock down the back wall of the room, and claiming the committee won't agree. Hannah tries to ask him to seek their permission, but he's firm about it. Frustrated, she's about to walk away when an idea hits her. Instead of installing a window to the grounds, they could paint a mural on the wall instead, keeping the history he's so desperate to preserve, but also giving the room the feeling of the outdoors that she wants to bring. Jeff is pleased with the idea, and it seems like they've finally found a way to compromise. Jeff compliments her ability to adapt, and the pair step closer as he recalls how impressive he's always found her. They share a moment, and it's like there's some unspoken emotion coursing between them. They almost forget the cameras are even on them, as they're ensconced in their own little world. Julie calls for a cut and they step away, shaken by what just happened. She gives them both the good news that there's going to be a preview screening of the first episode of the show in the park that night, just for the locals, so they can see how the design is progressing. Hannah is confused, as they've never done anything like this before, but agrees that it might be a good way to convince the townsfolk to get on board with their ideas. There's a snag, though. Apparently, the network have also requested that Hannah and Jeff go together, since they're co-hosting the show. Wally's flying in as the network representative, and they're going to do a meet and greet. Hannah is not thrilled to hear this, as she definitely doesn't want anything with Jeff to take even a slightly romantic turn, and she's afraid of what just happened between them moments ago. Jeff, on the other hand, is unaffected, which, if anything, annoys Hannah even more. Later on, Hannah goes for a cycle to clear her head, then gets dressed ready for the event. She's trying to decide what to wear, and as she sees Jeff's old car in the driveway, she smiles fondly despite herself, remembering the many occasions when he would come to pick her up in the same old vehicle in the past. It's like they've stepped back 10 years in time. Jeff sits outside with her parents, reminiscing about the memories they all share, when Hannah appears in a beautiful white summer dress. Jeff's mesmerized by her presence and takes his leave, thanking her parents for the chat as he follows Hannah out to his car. She mentions dryly that he said before he doesn't drive it much anymore, and he clarifies that he doesn't, leaving unspoken the words they both remember about him trying to impress someone, and making it clear that for him, tonight isn't just about a professional obligation. She blushes and steps in, caught up in the moment, despite her fear of falling into their old cycle once again. She just can't help herself, as Patrick said. The pair of them just gravitate. Jeff puts his arm around her as they drive, almost like a subconscious muscle memory, and before long they arrive at the venue. Jeff asks honestly if Hannah's okay, and in a brief moment of vulnerability she confesses that she's feeling the pressure of it all, of everyone who's depending on her to keep this show going. With his deep, reassuring voice, he promises her she's doing an amazing job, and advises her to block out all the voices telling her she isn't. She's flabbergasted at his ability to disregard all the negativity. Although she's always known he's stubborn, she never realized he is just so focused on his own vision. He helps her out of the car and they head in together, having just had probably the most open and honest conversation they've had in years. In the park, the music is pumping and everyone's excited. It looks as though most of the town has come. Wally stands on stage with the mic as the premiere begins to roll. As they watch themselves interacting, Hannah and Jeff become increasingly uncomfortable, and Jeff suggests they sneak out. Giggling like teenagers, the pair hurry off to the swings, and while the big screen plays in the background, Jeff bemoans his on-screen persona. Now that he's seeing himself, he's noticed so many things he says and does which frustrate him. Hannah laughs, familiar with the feeling. Jeff admits that he thought she looked perfect, as usual, which piques her interest. He admits that he's seen the entire run of the show, and he's always been impressed with her design. Enthusiastic and touched by his praise, she asks again whether his opinion has changed about her modern design aesthetic. He only looks up at her sadly, though, and states profoundly that he's always loved that the sky's the limit for her. She's amazing and ambitious, and she's right, her designs are limitless. But that also makes them hard to hold on to. Seeing the real meaning behind his words, behind what they've lost, Hannah sobers quickly, as the applause from behind them signals the end of the screening. Back at the venue, they receive a positive response from the locals, who are happy with how the show went. Patrick meets up with Jeff, and while Ally takes the kids home, the boys decide to go out, accompanied, of course, by Hannah and Julie, who are celebrating a successful night. They go to the bar in town and cheers a great premiere. Then Hannah makes everyone promise not to talk about work for the rest of the evening. It's trivia night, and she gets fired up, excited because when she and Jeff teamed up in the past, they were an unbeatable force. Jeff is suspicious that Patrick might have had something to do with the coincidental trivia night, and he shrugs, claiming it was Ally's idea. Their team are the winners, and Hannah and Jeff cheer in delight, still laughing as he finally drives her home. As they pull into Hannah's house, Jeff marvels at her intellect. Hannah compliments him too, but he looks into her eyes and claims he isn't always smart where it counts. A moment passes between them, and she looks down, uncomfortable at addressing the meaning behind his sincere words. She thanks him for a great evening, and as they smile at each other, it's like the end of a real date. As she heads back in, he questions the title of the show, Love and Design. Did she come up with it? She asks how he knew, and he smiles thoughtfully. Because it's just exactly like Hannah. The following day, the article in the newspaper is much more complimentary, with the whole town now excited about the developments at the manor. Hannah turns and begs her parents to let her renovate their yard, something she's wanted to do for years, and they finally give her their permission, causing her to clap in delight. Things are progressing well at the manor project, and when Jeff approaches her, Hannah reveals that she's going to be designing her parents' deck over the weekend. He cheekily requests some of her time, hoping to hang out, and she takes it as a challenge to complete her little side project as quickly as possible. Back at the house, Hannah pushes her parents out of the house, promising them she'll do a great job with it, and warning them to let her know before they come back. At the cafe, Jeff orders his food, but takes it to go, as he wants to bring some to Hannah. She smiles to see him when he arrives, happy that he came to visit, and that he was thoughtful enough to bring her some food. He offers to help her, and although she tries to refuse, when he insists, she puts him to work. After they're done with the deck, she gathers up her courage and finds a moment to ask him for a favor she's been wanting: permission from the committee to build an outside area for the guests at the new bed and breakfast. He's exasperated that she's talking about work, but lets her continue as she gushes about the necessity of having an outdoor seating space. Eventually he gives in, promising to ask them for permission, persuaded by her passion, on the condition that she stops talking about work. He puts an arm around her shoulder as he leads her away. The pair converse over lunch, and Hannah expresses how happy she is to finally be able to give something back to her parents, after all they did for her growing up. Carried away by her excitement, and unable to hold it back anymore, Jeff finally bursts the bubble and delves into their past. He expresses his regret for their lack of contact, how he never wanted them to break up, but he felt he had to let her go, because she had so much to see and accomplish. He was a stubborn fool who couldn't adapt to the change, but he did what he did so he could see her flourish. Hannah is affected deeply by his words, as she, too, had wanted their relationship to continue. Her old feelings have come right back to the surface, spending time around him again, and in spite of every warning bell in her head, she can't help but love the man in front of her. They're about to kiss when Hannah's parents arrive back home, breaking the moment. They're surprised to see Jeff there, but not unhappy. The pair lead her parents out onto the deck to show them the new construction there, and they're more than thrilled with how she's renovated it, hugging both of them happily. Hannah mouths a thank you to her partner in crime. Back at the manor, they're filming the next episode, and Jeff is shocked and happy to see that Hannah has kept the stained glass window he fought for. She claims he inspired her, and Jeff smiles from ear to ear as he watches her walk away. Newly buoyed by his approval, Hannah admits to Margot that the sconces don't work, and the owner agrees to let Hannah do what she wants with the room. Happy with her streak of success, she heads to the meeting with the committee, and Jeff backs her up, caught up in her passion for the project and fully believing in the vision she sets out for it. Persuaded by Jeff's vouching, the councilman agrees to look over the plans and let them know whether he'll make an exception. Hannah has a good feeling as they exit the chambers, excited at how everything is coming together. Jeff takes his opportunity to ask Hannah on another date that weekend, wanting to show her a walking route around the park. Hannah is hesitant. Despite their moment the other day, she knows she's leaving at the end of the project, and doesn't want to start anything between them again if it's only going to end in heartbreak. Jeff is persistent, though, and promises her they'll just see how it goes, the same words she said when she moved to Los Angeles the first time, and which he was unwilling to agree to. This causes a change of heart, and so she agrees to accompany him. On the walk, they flirt and chat happily, and Hannah asks Jeff about all the buildings around town, of which he has extensive knowledge. Just as he appreciates her ability to bring the modern aesthetic, she's beginning to appreciate his love of old things and keeping history alive. At the manor, things are finally coming together as they get ready to shoot the last episode. The local artist is starting on the mural as Jeff goes over the final details with Hannah. He lets her know that the committee approved the outside seating, and she leaps on him, hugging him in joy. Everything is working out perfectly, just as they'd hoped. Over the next few days, while the crew work, the pair of them explore the town, pick up the remaining furnishings they need, and get the last few fittings finalized. On the last day, Hannah stands in the garden, exhaling in relief, as everything is finally complete. She stands under the canopy they've built for the outside, Jeff watching on with a smile as he sees all her efforts come to fruition. He starts up the newly installed surround sound system and pulls her into a dance on the deck, the two of them caught up in their own world once again. They slow dance under the canopy, her hand on his shoulder, his breath on her neck, remembering all the wonderful memories they share and recapturing the love that still exists between them. Just as they're about to kiss, though, the crew come in to put the final touches on the outside, causing them to jump and break apart. Jeff doesn't waste any time, though, and asks Hannah out for a date after the grand opening, a real date. He wants her back. To the surprise of both of them, she agrees without any hesitation. As he walks away, bursting with anticipation, he turns back to remind her how proud he is of her, of everything she's built. She's getting ready for her date when her mom comes in and plays her a song she loved as a child. The pair of them discuss her situation with Jeff, and her mother admits that it's rare to find someone who understands you to your core and challenges you at the same time. Hannah knows that that's her way of saying she should try again with Jeff, in spite of how things have always ended in the past. This time, they're different people, and if she lets go of her own misgivings, she'll have a real chance at happiness. Jeff arrives at the door with a bouquet, and she takes his hand excitedly, ready to throw herself all in and take another shot at love. When they arrive, they're greeted by Wally and Julie, who toast to their success. As Hannah gets escorted off by Julie for the interviews, Wally is left with Jeff. He thanks him for his participation, and hints that they're looking to keep the new format of the show, with long stays and new locations for each shoot, rather than staying in Los Angeles. It's really worked out for them. Jeff is disheartened to hear that Hannah will be traveling all over, as it means it will be much more difficult for the two of them to keep their relationship going. However, he acts happy in front of the network boss, not wanting to jeopardize her career, even as his heart is breaking all over again at the thought of letting her go. As Hannah does the closing interview, Wally tries to give her instructions, but for the first time, she's unafraid, boosted by the courage she's found in Jeff. She informs him that she's going to do it her own way, and if he doesn't like it, he can find someone else for the show. Taken aback, Wally doesn't know what to say as Hannah steps up and addresses the camera. Later, Hannah's parents are lamenting letting her go again so soon, but she promises to come back and visit, and to their delight, she says she'll update their sunroom when she does. She heads off to find Jeff, who's throwing bags into the cornhole boards alone, preoccupied with his thoughts. Excited by the success of her interview, she approaches him, not realizing the mood he's in. She soon discovers that he's not okay, and he reveals with a sigh that it was a mistake giving it another try. Her life will always be leading her to somewhere else, and he'll only hold her back. Devastated, Hannah takes a step back. This time, she thought it would be different. She thought he was willing to change, to give it a try, to see what happens. She challenges him, begging him to change his mind, to realize how much better they make each other. But it seems as though the cycle has just repeated itself once again. He calls her back desperately, but can't think of what to say. Nothing he can think of makes the situation any different. Heartbroken, she runs off, leaving Jeff at a loss for words. The next morning, the paper, bearing an exciting headline showcasing the new bed and breakfast, is delivered as Hannah packs for her flight. Jeff meets Patrick in the cafe, pretending that he's completely fine. Patrick doesn't buy it, though, and thinks Jeff is making a big mistake letting Hannah go again. He should be doing everything possible to hold on to her this time, now that fate's given him a second chance. Jeff stutters and protests, but he knows his friend is right. He just can't bring himself to leap into chaos, as someone who's always made sure his feet are firmly on the ground. Back in Los Angeles, Hannah is holding back tears in the cab. Meanwhile, Jeff is at his desk, closing the file on the Manor project, still indecisive about what he's going to do. His assistant approaches him with another renovation that needs doing, and he realizes the job he signed up for isn't what he hoped it would be. In Los Angeles, Hannah has finally finished her balcony, relaxing in a beautiful outside space she's designed for herself. As she comes off a call with Julie, she puts on a song and takes a call from her food delivery driver, buzzing him into the building. To her shock, though, it's not a delivery guy who comes through the door, but Jeff. He met the guy downstairs and brought up the food she ordered, along with some donuts from the bakery in Lewisburg. She's confused. He broke up with her, again. Why did he fly all this way? Jeff approaches her, finally decisive, finally knowing what he wants. He explains that in all the years they've been trying to make it work between them, he was an idiot for not realizing that it worked all along. He was just too scared to commit to the unknown. But he's not scared anymore. She's the foundation he's been searching for. And he knows now that he doesn't need to be afraid of what the future will bring them, as long as they're together. He's given up the job in Lewisburg, and he'll follow her wherever she goes, as long as she lets him. Elated, Hannah kisses him, and the pair finally reignite their old flame, ready to tackle their new beginning together, on her beautiful balcony as they watch the sunset over the city skyline.